Yes,
Namrata Sarmah. She's going to speak on eco-museums, an evolving concept in emphasis to the Majuli River Island in Assam. Namrata is the museum consultant for independent projects and the assistant curator of National Maritime Heritage Complex at Lothal. She works as an independent museums consultant and researcher for offering in-depth expertise in the management of museums, archives, and cultural institutions. She's also an advisor in museums by cultural conservation and sustainable development with the Earth Initiative. In 2023, Namrata was involved with the event management team responsible for organizing the Lighthouse Festival in Goa, reviving 75 historic lighthouses across the country as part of a heritage tourism initiative. And also in the same year, she worked on a publication initiative on Majuli Island, supporting the 2023 edition of the Majuli Music Festival through the Earth Initiative. And she's also working on an exclusive education professionalization of knowledge management initiative, which seeks to promote museums as models to recalibrate values of sustainable development, impinge upon evolving museums phenomenon, to showcase transformative practices globally, imbibing principles of ICOM and UNESCO, as well as evolve holistic development initiatives and measures to strengthen and reform museums in, for, and as sustainable development realm. Namrata has an MA in History from the University of Delhi and in Museology from the National Museum Institute, New Delhi. Her interest lies in histories and memories, tangible and intangible heritage and cultural studies. And she's interested in engaging with oral narratives of mutinies and resistances and memories of displacement during decolonization. Wonderful. So it's over to you, Namrata. Please do it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the lovely introduction. Firstly, I would like to thank Dr. Kedashwari ma'am for giving me this opportunity to present my paper. I think Eco-Museum has been a very special subject for me. So yeah, I'm ready to present. If Samhita can share the screen for me.
Yes, I'll just do.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. So today my presentation is it will be very short and very imagery. So it's about Eco-Museum. It is about evolving the concept of Eco-Museum in the island district of Majuli. Next. So talking broadly about the eco-museums, I wanted to highlight on few curiosities of the new millennial in the globalized world, which is community participation, which is about the communities coming together in a space like museum and co-curating with the curators. Then inclusivity, which we have been already discussing in our previous presentations by Surya Pandey sir and Rotella sir. So it is about how museums are being inclusive spaces for visitors. Second is accessibility. So talking about accessibility, there are two types of accessibility in a museum, which is like the physical accessibility and intellectual accessibility. So physical accessibility is mostly about when you enter a museum, what are the physical access you get inside a museum, which is like an orientation, wheelchairs, whether it is inclusive enough for physically or disabled people to come inside the museum, if there are proper ramps, if there are proper lifts to get inside the museum. So a proper planning of building a museum is very necessary. And second is like the intellectual accessibility, which is like whether when we enter a gallery space, we have an orientation space, whether we have a gallery text, whether we have gallery labels, which can give us some information about the objects. Thirdly, it is about touch as a medium, which has been used very widely by most museums in the country, which is about tactile displays of objects for visually impaired people. Then museum and education, which is like the theme of 2024 International Museum Day, which is about, disseminating a lot of knowledge and research and how museums are accessible to a wider audience through either physically through objects or digitally through various other mediums. Then health and well-being is another sector which has been touched upon various museums in countries in UK, where there are people suffering from various kind of health issues where doctors are recommending to go to a museum and then feel better about it. They are like prescribing medicines to the people who are suffering through illness. Then sustainability and ethical museum. And lastly, about the eco museum, which is the topic which I'm going to talk about today. Next. So talking about eco museum, what is an eco museum? An eco museum is an organic social entity aspiring from a community agreement for the development of the community and local areas. It is still a culturally evolving phenomena in India. We don't see a lot of eco museums in the country. The only museum which has a little bit of an element of an eco museum is like the Living Museum, which is Indira Gandhi Rashtra Manav Sangrahalaya. And there are no other dedicated eco museums in the country. It talks about both tangible and intangible aspect, and it is also about democratization of space, a dialogue with the communities, a dialogue with the space, a dialogue with the ecological consciousness of a space. Next. Then again, I'm just giving a sketch of like two image, which is talking about museum with walls, where there is a collection, there is the building, there are experts, curators, and defined techniques. On the right-hand side, you can see that is like, it's a boundary of territory where it is talking about landscapes. It's talking about heritage sites, nature, collective memories. It is talking about the architecture, visitors, elders, traditions, altogether. Next. So this is basically a glimpse of Majuli River Island. It is the largest river island in the world. It is in Assam in the district of Jorhat. It is a first island district of the country. And my initiative was basically in sync with Sustainable Development Goal number 11, which is Sustainable Cities and Communities. And my initiative was funded by East West Center. It is a Hawaii-based organization based in US. And this is like Majuli. You can reach to Majuli by taking ferries. So ferries and boats are the only means of transportation to reach the island. It is hit annually by flood, and there is a lot of soil erosion having every year. So my initiative was basically about providing a new paradigm of ecological consciousness and exploring the role of museums in the age of climate crisis. And this also led to further sustaining the intangible aspects of a museum, that is its context, its heritage, its memory, along with the green agenda and sustainability of a museum, which all museums are aspiring for. Next. This is a sketch which came right after I visited from my field trip. Actually, there was this accident which happened in the middle of the river island where two boats collided, and there were people who were drowned and who lost their lives. And there were local people of the island who actually demanded a bridge to connect from Jorhat district to the main island of Majuli. Next. This is a map of Majuli showing where it is located. It is Majuli was actually in an area of 1,200 square kilometers, but it has reached down to only now 500 square kilometers. So every year, due to flood and soil erosion, we are losing Majuli, and hence my initiative was about documenting the communities residing there, the art and culture, the performing arts. And that's why, my initiative was serving the purpose of, reinstating the nature-culture bond. Next. So it is about a sense of place and identity. It is a multifunctional in character. Mostly it is about documentation of objects of research to facilitate the museum's interpretive work. Abandoning the traditional way of exhibitions in favor of an approach that enhances the setting of the object. Community schools through offering lectures, courses, field discussions, travel, publications, and publications which is related to educational or culturally designed for popular market, and awareness of local discoveries. So these were the kind of elements I was looking at through my field research for Majuli. Next. So Majuli actually has more than 65 shatras. Shatras are educational institution. It was Dr. Srimanta Shankar Deva was the pioneer of Shatra institution, and it actually preaches the the elements of Neo-Vaishnavism in the island. So this is just like a rough sketch of like how the Shatras look like, where are the communities who resides there, the Manikut, the Namghor, the prayer hall, the balconies, and how it looks like. Next. So this is a image of the Shatra inside. They have a prayer hall. On the bottom left side, you can see that is the entrance of the Namghor. Then every Shatra has a very huge gate, and every gate is very unique from each other. It gives the element of what the Shatras are. So even if there are 65 Shatras, we have Auniyati and Kamalabari Shatra, which is the most prominent and important ones in the island. And on the right-hand side, we can see a priest who is reciting a prayer during evening. Next. So these are the communities from the island. It is a place of assimilation of different races and tribes. There are people from Deuri, Mishing, and Rabha community who resides in the island. And also the Assamese community also resides all together. So this is just a glimpse of the communities residing there. Next. So this is a typical Mishing village from the island where weaving is one of the most important livelihood for them. And every household have a loin loom, which is there in their houses. Next. This is the Samaguri Shatra, which is one of the important Shatras of Majuli River Island again. It is it is important for mask making, and they do the traditional mask making method, and it is passed down from one generation to the other. On the right-hand side, he is the most junior most from all the Shatradhikars. So he has been passed on with this art of mask making, and they also go to various institutions in the country in museums to conduct workshops on mask making. Next. So handicrafts again plays a very important role, as I have showed you in the previous slide. So every household had a loin loom, and women in the household are usually, their main means of livelihood is weaving. And on the right-hand side, that is Deepa Rani Payeng. She actually has more than 100 women under her, where she conducts workshops on weaving and give them the skills and livelihood for revenue generation. Next. So this is the pottery making village. It is called the Halmora. And this is the women, the villagers, they are also dedicatedly involved in pottery making. Next. This is another boat making village. So Majuli actually gives a lot of glimpse of the living heritage and ethnographic practices of the builders in Majuli Island. So this is one of the villages. And on the left-hand side, you can see that is the typical Mishing house, where underneath there is a space where they keep the boats. So as I have already mentioned that island has been hit by flood every year. So these boats are the only means of communication to go from one village to the other. And on the right-hand side, it is a typical boat which they are creating. It is from one log. And usually they use ogor or sal tree to make the boats. And there are different kinds of hengul haital, a very indigenous way of painting the boats. And usually these people are not very educated, but they have the knowledge of how the boats will be sustaining in rivers or in seas. So they have that idea of how it can be long-lasting and durable in the river of Brahmaputra. Next. So this is basically like a glimpse of the Majuli exhibit initiative. So this is basically about, as I have mentioned, exploring the concept of eco-museum, adoption of a territory that is not necessarily defined by conventional boundaries. Secondly, it is about documentation and exhibition, how to give a voice to these communities, document them because it is nearby to extinction. So how we can really protect and promote them through exhibition or through workshops or through documentation. It is also about developing sustainable ways of action, which is tourism for the welfare of local communities. But in my field work, when I talk about tourism, they said that, they live a very traditional way of living. They have the Mishing traditional houses, which is made from bamboo and cane. So they do not really want that out of tourism. We have a lot of commercialization happening in the island. So that was also one of the key aspects which was derived from while taking local interviews from the communities. Then secondly, it is the first inland district of the country, and this shall help in uplifting the connectivity to reach the island and increase accessibility. So as we see that after that incident happened, so the locals are actually demanding for a bridge which will connect Jorhat to the Majuli Island. So even that connectivity can make more accessibility, which can help in creating an eco museum. So the shatras, which I have mentioned previously, the villages, which I have mentioned in the slides, all this can be mapped together. So my fieldwork basically was about mapping it together and creating a concept of eco museum so that we can also talk about the communities and also the eco consciousness of a particular place like the Majuli Island, in the entire island itself. Then it is also about the representation of a community in a museum, in a space like museum where they will be represented and promoted, and there will be people knowing about them in a globalized world. And East West Center is a global institution, and while this initiative happened, I found it very, very important that these communities and this voices and these stories of the island were actually promoted through my initiative. Secondly, it is about being a continuous process of evolution. So where new features and improvements, both long-term and short-term, were introduced through development programs. So there were capacity building programs. There were new collaborations through this initiative. I got to collaborate with few other NGOs who were locally working inside the island. I could also get a chance to meet the local MLA. He was also interested in creating physically about this eco museum, and my first round of fieldwork has been done last year. So now I'm looking for a second funding and a second initiative so that I can map the entire space and then a real eco museum can be created inside the island. Next. This is just a glimpse of like few bibliographies. Peter Davis, if anyone is interested in knowing about eco museums, the new museology concept. Next. Yeah, so I was supported by East West Center, and since I'm a fellow of the British Museum International Training Program in 2018, they also contributed in this initiative. Next. Thank you so much.
So, Namrata?
Yes, ma'am.
That was a novel presentation.
Thank you, ma'am.
I did really enjoy it.
Thank you so much.
You were in the 2018 training program. From which
Yes.
institute, as an independent fellow, you went?
Yes, ma'am. I was working with Memorial Museum and Library as education assistant then, but I went as a independent.
Which memorial?
Nehru Memorial Museum.
Nehru
now
Memorial. Okay. Okay. So from there you were sent. That was 6 months, no, or 6 weeks?
Ma'am, 6 weeks.
6 weeks, yes, that was a 6 weeks. Good that
Yes.
you benefited from it, both for your project and for your studies.
Yes,
so,
ma'am.
Any this Maritime Museum, Lothal, I already told you. Samita here and myself here, we worked for it. It's a very interesting. So when send us some pics of the building.
Surely, ma'am.
It's coming
Yes.
up. The Tata Projects is building it. So whatever is the objects shifted? Not yet.
No, ma'am, because construction is happening. So if we get the objects, it might get affected.
No, that is different. And second, I wanted to tell you about eco museums. Sonia, with your permission. Sonia, with your permission. Sonia is muted, is it?
Her mic is on, but I think
is she muted?
Not able to hear us. No, her mic is on.
Yeah.
Yes,
So, what was I? Eco museums. Let us continue, Namrata.
Yes, ma'am.
This is for everybody, especially for you. It's not a new concept in India. If you go back to the Ashokan era and you see the stone slabs planted, they were all planted in junctions with Ashoka's messages. We can take that to be the beginning of eco museums in India.
Right,
remember this point in your next presentation. Say that it was from the Ashokan times. And then, secondly, we do not have many eco museums in India because we have the problem of the vagaries of the climate and the weather.
Yes,
Right?
ma'am. Yes,
And
ma'am.
second, we have the problem of security.
Yes, ma'am.
So museums with antiquities, especially organic, cannot have
Eco.
museums for reasons of security and conservation and preservation. Yes, in the National Museum portico, there is a huge stone, Ashokan edict, which is
Yes.
out, which is
Yes.
kept outside. Yeah. So this is the second thing I wanted to share with you.